record. Alrighty, there we go. Okie doke. This is Natural Order show. This will be episode number 14. Tyler Neutron here with Paul. And today we're going to take a dive on the Golem of Prague myth and kind of how it's resonated throughout history into the modern day. And I'll let you take it away with more details.
Yeah, so this is kind of building on the episode we did, episode number 7 about Back to the Future, where we looked into like the Saturn symbolism in that, and then the predictive programming of events that have since happened. So we're going to be looking at 4 different like major franchises today: Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, the Terminator movies, and then Dragon Ball Z, all of which have an allegorical retelling of the Golem of Prague. Most of them also have at least a little bit of a reference to Saturn. Some of them go a lot harder on that than others do. And they also all have at least a little bit of some kind of predictive programming in them, although, again, some of them go a lot harder on that than others. Not all of them are going to be quite as clear as, what we saw in Back to the Future, where almost every single major plot point in the first movie had to do with either Saturn or, 9/11 symbolism. That movie was loaded with it. Some of these other movies and books and shows and whatever, they reference a lot of this stuff, but they don't necessarily make their entire plot revolve around them, but some of them definitely take a lot more from it than others. So we're going to be looking at those patterns. We're going to be looking at this myth and what it means, and basically why it's been chosen as one of the myths that's been put into mass media so much. So the first thing we're going to look at is actually just a few-minute clip from a PBS special, or some PBS show that they do about, ancient folklore, and the episode that they did on the Golem of Prague, just to give people a little bit of a summary of what that myth is about, in case you've never heard that particular folk tale before. So I guess you can go ahead and play that, and then we'll talk about it a little bit after the clip.
Alrighty. Yeah, and that works out too, because like I was about to ask, like for a good reminder for me and just for everybody, we'll do like a good intro, and it sounds like this video is perfect for that. Also, I don't think you can see it right now, but I want to show the background for this video I did was just an image I found. Let me see if I can show it real quick. A little Golem of Prague image. I'll show it to you later. Let's see here. So let me get this clip up. PBS. And I gotta share it in individually. Gonna be a window capture. Yep, there we go. Let's see, we'll just put it right there. And alrighty, so this is a 6-minute clip. Are you gonna try to play it at the same time? You wanna do it like we did before and just kind of try to play it so you know? Or
yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, all right, here we go. So 3, 2, 1, go.
In 17th century Europe, terrible events were affecting Jewish communities. The 30 Years' War, the Cossack Revolt, and the massacres of the Jewish people. They were also accused of blood libel, or the ritual murder of Christian children. They needed a redeemer, a symbol of hope, so they turned back to their folklore and to the golem. This mud and earth-formed humanoid creature turns up in many tales, and not only in Jewish but non-Jewish stories. Golem stories have survived over time, persisting in oral and written folklore. But it was during times of genocide and war that the story of the golem holds the most significance. I'm Dr. Emily Zarka, and this is Monstrum. In Jewish folklore, there are 3 reasons to create a golem: as a way to show one's mastery of the Kabbalah, to have a trustworthy and dependable servant for labor, or to provide protection for the Jewish community. You've likely seen a golem, even if you didn't recognize it at the time. He's taken lots of different forms in recent years, inspiring characters in The Simpsons, Pokemon, Dungeons & Dragons, Arthur, and even The X-Files. But golems can be traced back to 6th century Jewish culture. He's old as dirt. The golem story most widely known is the early 20th century version of the Golem of Prague. In it, Rabbi Lowe asked the heavens how to stop the persecution of his community, and he received an answer: make a golem. To do this, he seeks the help of 2 other rabbis, each born with the power of one of the 4 elements. The rabbis represented air, fire, and water. Clay collected from the river served as the earth element. The rabbis take the clay and shape the form of a man. They each walk around the form counterclockwise 7 times, reciting special letters. The body begins to glow and vapors rise from the form. And the golem opens his eyes, now a living thing. The Golem of Prague is named Yosef and looks human but cannot speak. Rabbi Lowe tells the Golem he was created to guard the Jewish people from their enemies. Yosef has supernatural strength and can become invisible with the help of a special amulet. He completes many tasks, serving as a watchman, rescuing a kidnapped girl, and even summoning a dead woman. The Golem of Prague is only one version of the Golem. Others have existed for thousands of years. One could be brought to life by a Jewish scholar, usually a rabbi, and God's name is required in some way to actually bring it to life. You can animate a golem by reciting the proper letters of God's name, placing God's name into the golem's mouth, affixing it to the forehead, or by placing the Hebrew word for truth into the clay body. To understand why the golem is created from dirt, first we have to take a quick look at another creation story, one found in the Torah, the foundational text of Judaism. There it is said that God created Adam, the first man, by forming him from the dust of the earth and breathing life into him. Jewish scholars developed the Golem legend based on the Adam creation story. Historians point to a section of the Talmud where a rabbi created an artificial man who was like any other, except he could not speak, for only God. Traditional variations of the golem are mute. In later versions, the creature becomes dangerous or hard to control because it gains power the longer it is animated, or it simply takes direction too literally. Looking back to the Golem of Prague, perhaps the singular most important character in these stories, even more so than the Golem himself, is Rabbi Lowe, a real person and noted leader of the Jewish community in 16th century. Interestingly, Lowe himself didn't believe in miracles, condemned magic, and never wrote about the Golem. In 1909, a manuscript supposedly written by Rabbi Lowe's son-in-law was discovered by Orthodox Rabbi Yudel Rosenberg, although it's generally agreed that this document never existed. He then published his version of the Golem of Prague, which became one of the most important Golem legends. The late 19th century was the first time the Golem became not just a means of labor, but a protector of the Jewish people. Throughout the 19th century, there were multiple cases of blood libel, an anti-Semitic accusation that claims a Jewish person ritualistically murdered a Christian, usually a child. Rabbi Rosenberg was all too familiar with this. There was a blood libel case near Prague in 1899, as well as organized violence against the Jewish people in Russia at the turn of the 20th century. It makes sense that he would portray the Golem in his story as a protector at a time when his people really needed one. In 1917, the Golem Legends of the Ghetto of Prague, the next popular text featuring Rabbi Lowe, was published. The Jewish author was part of the community forced to relocate to the interior of Austria after the Russian invasion. Although similar to Rosenberg's version, in this story, Rabbi Lowe is forced to destroy the Golem, here named Joseph, because he becomes a danger to the entire city. Nevertheless, the story ends with the Golem waiting in the attic of a synagogue in Prague to be reawakened the next time persecuted Jews need protecting. The increase in Jewish migration throughout the 20th century helped spread the Golem story. We've seen it in movies, ballet, children's books, and comics. But in each new version, it has continued to change form. The original goal of creating a Golem was to make something more powerful than yourself. In most cases, this was not done to oppress or control anyone, but to give the creator and their community agency, even freedom. What began as a way to demonstrate mastery of a religious text morphed into an unintended monster and was later reclaimed as a protector. Golem's story is as malleable as the clay from which it was formed.
All right.
I muted my mic. I said, wow, I took a lot of notes there. Let's see here. Can I remove this? There we go.
Yeah, so one thing that I kind of need to add to that video before we get to any of the others definitely is one of the metaphors that's often found at the end of the various versions of the Golem story is sort of a fall metaphor. So like in the Brothers Grimm version of the story, when the Golem is deactivated by the rabbi, the Golem falls over and crushes the rabbi, and both of them end up dying. There are other versions of the story where, you know, as the Golem is like turning on its master or turning on the Jews, it will, knock the rabbi down into a pit or down a well, or throw him off a tower or something like that. So there's often this sort of downfall metaphor at the end of the Golem myth, and that's something that you're going to see, particularly throwing him into a pit. That metaphor is going to play out in a lot of the allegorical tales about him. So that's something that definitely needs to be added to that video. But otherwise, it covered a lot of things. Kind of interesting that they brought up, the blood libel accusations, where, of course, it's totally crazy to think that Jews were sacrificing children, even though tons of people all across Europe, divided by thousands of miles and hundreds of years, sometimes all just somehow randomly out of nowhere came to the same anti-Semitic accusation against Jews for no reason whatsoever,
Yeah, and just like the idea that it had a name, it had like a very like specific name for what this thing is, what this act that they do. Like, yeah, that's what cracked me up a little bit. It's just like, it's that same old thing, like victim narrative, but yet they're doing this like almost like, I guess you could almost say satanic type sacrifices and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, a couple notes I had. One thing I talked about. Number one, just like they talked about some of the pop culture references. Like I saw the Miyazaki, the Pokemon, some of that stuff, and there's a few others that I think about, and how like it's been a particularly alluring archetype to me. Like when I've gone to some of these different like cultural expressions, like Pokemon, for example, or even Yu-Gi-Oh. There's like dragons and all kinds of other kind of myths and archetypes in there. But something about the Golem appeals to me. Like I know there's like Regigigas and there's Gate Guardian. And stuff like that. So I just think that's kind of interesting. And also,
yeah, I found it interesting that they mentioned like The Simpsons. I think was the first pop culture reference they mentioned, and then X-Files was the last one they mentioned. And both of those, of course, are loaded with predictive programming.
Yeah,
I mean, The Simpsons has predicted so many things over the years. The X-Files, like, not only is there a bunch of 9/11 and COVID symbolism in the X-Files itself, but the first spinoff, or one of the spinoffs from that, The Lone Gunman, the very first episode of that is about somebody literally flying a plane and trying to crash it into the Twin Towers, which
oh my god,
that episode came out like 6 months prior to 9/11.
Wow, so that was
yeah,
one we didn't even talk about. That's crazy.
Yeah, you can even look that show up on Wikipedia, and it will have a little like paragraph in there about the controversy about that that episode being released and then 9/11 happening and how weird that was.
Wow, very weird. Yeah, jeez. A couple other, I don't want to derail too much, but I just want to say, it's interesting too. They said like one of the prerequisites for being able to, or one of the reasons why you would summon a golem was just like, I guess it was like to demonstrate mastery of the Kabbalah, or you have to demonstrate mastery of the Kabbalah to summon a golem. And I thought that was kind of interesting too. Like that is like one of the only pieces about the Jewish tradition that appeals to me to an extent, is just like the Kabbalah, like some of the occult kind of stuff that's in there. I thought it was cool too, like just like the four elements in the myth. I think that's kind of an interesting expression.
Yeah, they kind of borrowed the four elements from like first the Greek tradition and then the alchemical tradition,
Egyptians, and
so,
even farther back too, probably. Yeah, very cool. All right, that's all I had. That's the only notes I had, really. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so I guess my other main thing to mention is this is, of course, about Jews sort of creating an artificial person or artificial entity in order to defend them. So when you look at some of their history, like they created the neoconservative political movement in order to get us to go fight all the wars for Israel to protect them from, Muslims in the Middle East. They, created communism as sort of a tool to use to put themselves into power in Eastern Europe and in China and elsewhere. So, this is a people who have created multiple different movements over the years to sort of use as a tool in order to increase their own power. So, in a way, this, the Golem, it's sort of a metaphor for the way that Jews create and control other movements and use them to defend themselves. And we're going to see somebody basically doing that in the next one, which is Star Wars. So go ahead and ready that clip up. We're going to watch some scenes from the Star Wars movies and then a little bit from the Clone Wars TV show, where it kind of gets into, the use of the Golem in a metaphorical sense throughout Star Wars, and how the Sith kind of created their own movements in order to control the population and accomplish their goals and gain power.
Hell yeah. I was going to say, I'm got it pulled up here. Yeah, it was funny. She was like, they created the Golem to protect themselves. It's like, number one, unlikely they're probably using it to fuck with people to start with, and number two, the reason they're protecting themselves is obviously because they've probably done something. But
Yeah, they always tell you what other people have done to them and never what they did to other
yeah,
people.
exactly. All right. Yeah, I got it pulled up here. I love Star Wars, love Clone Wars. Let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and start it. So 3, 2, 1, go.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
No.
I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life.
More machine now than man, twisted and evil.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Naboo's system has been invaded by the droid armies of the
I
Trail.
object! There is no proof!
Machines making machines?
They're cloners. Damn good ones, too.
Begun. The Clone War has.
I'm a Toydarian. My tricks don't work on me. Only money. No money, no parts, no deal.
And the intergalactic banking clan.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
Clone Trooper Top lost his senses and killed a Jedi General. Seeming to have no awareness of his actions, Top's health began to deteriorate rapidly. Fearing the illness was linked to a separatist plot.
If a virus was the cause of Top's breakdown...
It's fine, sir. Fighting a virus is a nice change of pace from all those clankers.
Everything seems normal.
Oh, great. Well, that means they can let me out.
I am afraid that is not possible. You must remain quarantined until we have pinpointed the exact cause of the other clone's breakdown.
A parasite. Native to Ringo Vinda. Probably in a canteen of water they both shared. It did cause the inhibitors to decay once the parasite had taken hold. It is very rare. However, just to be cautious, we have prepared an inoculation for every clone trooper in our army.
So, I guess it's over then.
Yes.
Makes me want to watch Star Wars again. I started watching some of the. I haven't finished all the Clone Wars, and it's been a long time since I've actually seen the movies all the way through. There's so much good stuff back in there.
Yeah, so I guess that first clip that I put up there of the legend of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Of course, Plagueis is similar to Prague, also similar to Plague, and he's a Sith Lord who is powerful enough to create life in the same way that the rabbis were powerful enough to create artificial life like the Golem. So the fact that you've got that reference definitely calls back to the idea of a sorcerer who's powerful enough to create an artificial life like a Golem, and the name is similar to Prague. So that's the first thing that I've noticed. Second thing, second clip in there, the very first shot that we see of the inside of the ships in Episode 4, A New Hope, we see two humanoid droids walking down the hallway before we ever actually see any humans. So the very first people, so to speak, that we see are artificial people. They're golems. They're humanoid droids. We then see Darth Vader, who, of course, his costume is very similar to the Golem of Prague statue in Prague. It's almost like, George Lucas took a picture of that statue, gave it to his costume designer, and said, "I want this, but in space."
Yeah.
And of course, in not in Episode 4, but in Episodes 5 and 6, you can actually see the Hebrew writing on his chest plate if you look close enough at certain scenes. And I don't know if that little pic lasted long enough for everyone to read, but basically the rough translation of the Hebrew in there is, "His sins will be forgiven when he atones." Which, if you think about it, he goes over to the dark side, he does all this horrible stuff, Palpatine controls him with, shame and guilt, and hopelessness, some of the tools that are used against us today. And when he finally does overthrow Palpatine and frees himself and goes back to the light side, well, he does free the galaxy. He does finally, basically accomplish the goal that he was given as the chosen one, to overthrow the Sith and restore balance to the Force. And so in doing that, he is redeemed, even for all the horrible things that he did while he was under the control of the Sith.
Hell yeah.
But I found it really interesting, though, that in a universe where Jews do not exist, they've got literal Hebrew writing on his chest plate. So if anyone is, looking at this and not sure if this is really a reference to something, why would there be literal Hebrew writing on the guy's chest plate unless they're trying to reference something about Judaism and his character?
Well, you said Jews don't exist in the Star Wars universe, but you did include the clip of the one guy who haggles or whatever about the money scene.
Right, and so to further the idea of Anakin as sort of being this golem character who's, he becomes more machine than man, he becomes more artificial than real. He begins his story as the slave of this long-nosed, greedy alien merchant. Who else do we think of when we think of, long-nosed, greedy, hand-rubbing alien merchants? In the second movie, or, Episode 2, I should say, he even wears a little, round hat. It's not quite a yarmulke, but it's still a round hat. So, there's all these things about his character that are very much like a stereotypical Jewish merchant, and he owns a woman and child as slaves, the child, of course, being Anakin Skywalker, who goes on to then become the Golem. You also have the Sith symbolism where, the TIE fighters, the wings of the TIE fighter are a hexagon, it's 6 triangles in a hex shape. You look at the symbol of the Sith Empire, it is a sun or star with 6 points of light, so a 6-pointed star. Who else's symbol is a 6-pointed star? Well, you look at the Separatists, their symbol is 6 triangles in a hex shape again. So whose symbol is 6 triangles?
It's just two Jewish factions in the future vying it out at this point. Everyone else is gone.
Yep, and in fact, if you look at Episode 2, which came out, just a few months after 9/11, so they'd already long since finalized the script and done all the filming, and it was in post-production by the time 9/11 happened. And you look at the story of that, and it's about Anakin, whose name sounds like American, murdering a bunch of sand people in a movie about a fake war started by a tiny religious cult that infiltrated the government and business community in order to create a fake conflict that they control both sides of.
Wow.
You have this narrative that's pretty similar to what was going on in the country at the time that that the movie came out.
Yeah.
Basically told to us, in allegorical form. And if you're paying close attention to all of the symbolism in the movie and the symbolism surrounding the Clone Wars, you figure out that, this is a war between droids who are artificial men and clones who are artificial men. So you've got your artificial men, your golems, versus artificial men who are golems fighting each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of, obviously, there's a lot of, robot stuff, and then also just in general, AI. I think when we talked about this briefly early on, that's definitely the most modern equivalent that we're seeing is all this kind of controversy that's surrounding this technology and what that could mean. It's absolutely in that domain.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that a little bit in the Terminator, when we look at that clip, because that one's definitely about AI basically taking over.
Yes, we're getting there.
And all the danger that can cause. Yeah, but definitely, the Star Wars movies give you that narrative of this tiny little religious cult that's so obsessed with the number 6 that all their symbols revolve around the number 6. They use Order 66 in order to, exterminate the Jedi, whose name is like technically it's based on the Egyptian Djedi, which is like a group of mystics from ancient Egypt. But it also sounds really similar to Judai. So it's almost like you've got the Jewish cult, and then you've got this other order that was fighting against them. And the Djedi actually, in their history, they had to challenge, Abrahamic and other, like Middle Eastern cults, basically for spiritual supremacy back in the day.
Right.
So yeah, so he's picking a group that, basically went to war with the Jews in a spiritual sense to name the Jedi after, and to borrow quite a bit of their sort of symbolism and look from. So that's an interesting angle of it. And there's a lot more mystical symbolism in Star Wars than what I'm necessarily going to be able to get into right now.
For sure.
But yeah, there's tons of Golem references in there. There's sort of the War on Terror reference in Episode 2, and then when you get to Season 6 of the Clone Wars, that's the one that I've pulled those clips at the end from. Season 6 being a season that, all the Sith symbolism revolves around the number 6, so if you're going to put something in, it's probably going to be in Season 6. Well, that starts with a narrative about basically a virus that causes the control chips in the soldiers' brains to screw up and almost exposes their plot to genocide the Jedi. So as they're planning this genocide of the Jedi, there's this disease pandemic that it only actually affects the one trooper, but basically they shut down the investigation into the possibility that these chips are preparing for a genocide by saying, oh no, it was just a disease that caused it, so we're going to give a vaccine to everybody, and that's going to solve things.
Oh,
so
man.
I thought the predictive programming around that being in Season 6 and coming out just like a couple years before the COVID events happened, that just kind of struck me as something like, if you're going to put the predictive programming in, you're going to put it right there. And then the next story arc after that is about the banking clan, which you saw like the long-nosed bankers with Plagueis, the one whose name sounds like Prague, is one of those giant-nosed banking clan people. Gosh, I wonder who that could be a metaphor for. But yeah, the second arc in Season 6 is about the banking clan and basically how Palpatine engineers an economic collapse in order to have an excuse to take total control of the galactic banking system.
Wow.
Which we're kind of seeing like,
wow.
Yeah, all the central banks right now are sort of loosely controlled by, Jewish banking families, but yet we have this plan in place by the elite to centralize everything with central bank digital currencies. And so there's a lot of worry among the more conspiratorial communities that at some point they're going to basically hold some kind of a event, that's going to justify taking over the financial system and centralizing global finance all under one entity.
Even more, and digitizing it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's an interesting parallel there with what people are kind of expecting to come next. The third story arc in Season 6 is about a little cult that's like kidnapping people, and it's the demon's name sounds really similar to, it's like this dark side of the Force demon basically that they're sacrificing people to.
Wow.
And the name of it sounds really similar to, I think, Moloch or one of the Old Testament demons. So yeah, it's like slightly different from that, but similar enough that you can see how they're using that as an allegory for the human trafficking and sacrifices and such that kind of got exposed a little bit with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Claire Bronfman and some of the other people like that have been exposed in the last few years. And then the final arc in that season is about Yoda finally figuring out how to achieve a sort of spiritual immortality through the Force that you see at the end of Episode 6 and that you see with like Obi-Wan's Force ghosts. So
damn, that sounds like a banger.
So that season is definitely the most interesting one in terms of like both occult symbolism and predictive stuff. Definitely an interesting season to check out. So that's pretty much what I had noticed in Star Wars. So you've definitely got the Golem narrative of the little tiny Sith obsessed cult creating their own golems to fight their battles for them, and even pitting their golems against each other when it serves their interests.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give a good real world example of that. So, and of actually how the golem symbolism even impacts the real world. So the Republican Party is often called the GOP, and we're told that it stands for Grand Old Party, but it's the same initials as Golem of Prague.
Oh,
On the other side, you've got the left-wing progressive movement. The progressives are like the biggest left-wing movement.
Prague.
Their name starts with Prague.
Yeah.
So you've got the GOP Golem of Prague versus the Golem of Progressives.
Damn. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That totally tracks. Yeah. Basically two artificial sides. Yeah. Damn.
Yep, and they're both controlled by the same group of people that are just throwing us against each other in order to attain their goals. Yeah, and no one quite spells that sort of false conflict out quite as well as Star Wars does, in my opinion. They do a fantastic job of that, and as much as people sometimes crap on the prequel trilogy for not having the best acting, as far as the depth of the storyline in that trilogy, it's far and away one of the best movie trilogies ever.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I know a lot of people, I've heard, they're like, oh, it's not as good. I'm like, it's got a lot of good stuff going for it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right. Unless you had any other thoughts on that one, that pretty much wraps up Star Wars. So we can move on to Lord of the Rings if you're ready.
Yeah, sounds good. Like I said, it's just making me want to watch Star Wars, and sometimes that's one of those universes that like I'll get really into, and I'll just be like looking through the lore, and sometimes like writing some fanfic. It's just a really cool setup. But yeah, Dragon Ball. Okay, you want me to go ahead and pull it up?
Yeah, let's go for the Lord of the Rings one next.
Oh, okay. Did I? I may have missed the DBZ Star Wars. I don't. Did you send me that one at the same time? Oh, here it is. Okay, I must have expanded it. Sorry, let me click on this. Hopefully it's not too... Okay, yeah, this one's not very big, so it should download pretty quick.
Okay.
I must have missed it somehow, because it's like expanded like a full clip. I wonder if I
can... Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's because this one's under...
a different format somehow.
Well, this one's under the limit, so it might let me play it directly in Telegram. I don't know. Well, let's see what it does. I can do that if I need to. I can just play it straight in there. It should be really quick, though. Let me go check my folder and see. Okay. Yeah, I think it's here. I'm just trying to open up something else. VLC. All right. And then we need to pull it up here. Gonna go ahead and boom. Window. There we go. And make it bigger. Okie dokie. 3, 2, 1, go.
It began with the forging of the Great Rings. 3 were given to the elves, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings. 7 to the dwarf lords, great miners and craftsmen of the mountain halls. And 9 rings were gifted to the race of men who, above all else, desire power. For within these rings was bound the strength and will to govern each race. But they were all of them deceived, for another ring was made. In the land of Mordor, in the fires of Mount Doom, the Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret a master ring to control all others. And into this ring, he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life. One ring to rule them all. And for 2,500 years, the ring passed out of all knowledge. Until, when chance came, it ensnared a new bearer. The ring came to the creature Golem, who took it deep into the tunnels of the misty mountains. And there, it consumed him. The ring brought to Golem unnatural long life. For 500 years it poisoned his mind.
I looked everywhere for the creature Golem, but the enemy found him first. I don't know how long they tortured him, but Amidst the endless screams and inane babble, they discerned two words.
For the black speech of Mordor may yet be heard in every corner of the West. The ring is altogether evil.
My heart tells me that Golem has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before this is over.
Maybe he does deserve to die. But now that I see him, I do pity him.
We be nice to them if they be nice to us. Takers of us. We swear to serve the master of the precious. We will swear on even the precious.
The world is changing. Who now has the strength to stand against the armies of Isengard and Mordor? To stand against the might of Sauron and Saruman and the union of the two towers. Together, my lord Sauron, we shall rule this Middle-earth. The old world will burn in the fires of industry. The forests will fall. A new order will rise. We will drive the machine of war with the sword and the spear and the iron fist of the orc.
If we don't defend our country, Saruman will take it by force.
That is a lie. Saruman the White has ever been our friend and ally.
How long is it since Saruman bought you? What was the promised price, Screamer? When all the men are dead, you will take your share of the treasure?
You seem much, Eomer, son of Eomer. Too much. You are banished forthwith from the kingdom of Rohan, all its domains, under pain of death.
You have no authority here. Your orders mean nothing.
This order does not come from me. It comes from the king. He signed it this morning.
Who are you?
Mustn't ask us, not his business.
Gandalf told me you were one of the river folk.
Cold be heart and hand and bone, and cold be travellers far from home.
He said your life was a sad story.
They do not see what lies ahead when sun has failed and moon is dead.
You were not so very different from a hobbit once, were you? Smeagol.
What did you call me?
That was your name once, wasn't it? A long time ago.
had me crawling on all fours like a beast.
Send me not from your sight.
No, my lord! No, my lord! Let him go.
He bore a strange ring. 2 serpents with emerald eyes, one devouring, the other crowned with golden flowers.
The ring of Barahir.
Hell yeah. Such a good series as well.
Alright, so a lot of stuff there. I'm actually going to start off with the Saturn references because that's kind of a big part of understanding Lord of the Rings. So, we did talk a bit about Saturn in the Back to the Future movie. Of course, he was the Greco-Roman god of time who devoured his children, only for Zeus to overthrow him and free his children. In this, though, the symbolism mostly revolves around Saturn as like a planet, as like an astronomical or astrological concept. So Saturn, the planet, of course, has rings. It also has a stormy eye on it. So when you look at Sauron, whose name is one letter off from being an anagram for Saturn, basically take the name Saturn, drop the T, add an O. People can claim to be a Catholic, so maybe that's part of the reason why he dropped the T or the cross from his name and he added the O because it's a ring. So Sauron, the Lord of the Rings, Saturn was a Time Lord with rings on his planet, also has that big eye in the sky that watches over all of Middle-earth. So you've got all that various Saturn symbolism around the character of Sauron. As far as the rings go, you had 19 rings plus the 20th ring being the one ring, which we're going to kind of come back to the numbers 19 and 20 a little bit later in another Saturn reference. Anyway, I'll move on from that part. So then we have the character Golem, whose name, of course, is very similar to the word golem. His original name was Smeagol, which again is kind of similar to the name Golem because you've got Smeagol, so Gaul like Golem, and then E is like. It's like golems, but take the last half and put it backwards at the beginning of the word. So again, it's a name that's really, really similar to the word golem. So both of Golem's names are really similar to the word golem, and he is a human who got corrupted and transformed by the ring into something not human, or I guess maybe he was a hobbit or something along those lines, something humanoid. Anyway, he's been transformed into something that is corrupted and not really fully human and completely under the control of the ring. So, like Darth Vader, he started out, relatively normal and then got corrupted more and more over time until eventually he was under the control of evil and no longer really a full person for a while. But then, over the course of his story arc, he does grow a little bit as a character, but at the end of the movie, he again succumbs to, the greed and lust for the ring. But as he and Frodo are fighting over it, they fall off the edge. Frodo decides that he values his life more than the ring. Gollum decides he values the ring more than his life and ends up falling into the pit. And both of them die, just as Palpatine fell into the pit and then Vader died shortly afterwards. So you again have, the Golem's maker falling into the pit, and then the Golem maker and the Golem both dying basically together as a result of that. So yet another reference to the Golem myth and to the sort of fall metaphor at the end of that Golem myth that was present in most of the myths.
Wow.
So that's pretty much the mystical symbolism side of it. And you can definitely see there in the scene where he's falling into the pit, trying desperately to hold on to the ring. You can see the similarity with that and with the scene where Palpatine is hurled down the shaft, and they're they both realize that their doom is upon them and there's nothing that they can do about it, but that's the way it goes.
Maybe that's us now. That's us in the modern America, probably.
Well, if anything, we would be the golems who are under the control of evil, and hopefully we will come to our senses and throw it into the pit. But maybe one way or another, whether we do or not, it's going to lead to their downfall. Certainly Golem didn't overcome the evil of the ring, but at the end, he still ended up being the cause of it being destroyed, even if it wasn't his intention at all.
Yeah, as long as the ring makes its way into the pit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I thought about how each of the races got like rings, but then you have this idea of the master ring. Definitely makes me think of like the kind of the Jewish power structure in the modern world. It's really interesting.
Yeah, they give many different races and nations their sort of artificial puppet leaders that look and sound like they're one of your own, but yet really they're serving Jewish interests and not you.
Yep.
Yeah, and then as far as predictive stuff, of course you've got the two towers that need to fall in a war between the free men of the West and the dark hordes of the East. It's maybe not anywhere near the clearest prediction of 9/11, but I think even if he didn't necessarily know that the event of 9/11 was going to happen, he could at least see some of the mystical symbolism that went into the planning of the 9/11 event, where the basically the people who planned that event are drawing on the same sorts of mystical symbolism that's in their works for a while. And so and I don't know that I can fully explain, because I'm not a Talmudic scholar or a Kabbalist or anything like that, so I can't necessarily fully explain what their meaning behind it is. But definitely they've been putting out this idea of two towers that are going to fall and cause a war between the West and the East for quite a long time before 9/11, and we saw that in Back to the Future with the twin trees being a representation of the twin towers and being attacked, and the Christian building gets slammed into, the Muslims crash into a building. So that kind of symbolism, it's been around long enough that Tolkien was writing about it 50 years before 9/11 happened.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a lot of it, whenever you have synchronicities like that, a lot of it for me, I think about how it might be just unconscious, or like there's just so many, or you can even think about the reasons why we built two towers in the first place, like the twin towers in the first place. Like a lot of it just goes back to a lot of forces and myths and archetypes that are just maybe deeply woven in like the kind of collective unconscious, as Jung might say, and how a lot of that plays out either unconsciously or consciously.
Yeah, and it's sometimes hard to know like how much of that is our subconscious, how much of that is some sort of spiritual force that's guiding things, and how much of that is people planning things out and orchestrating things ahead of time.
Right.
And unless you're the one making it, you don't necessarily know.
Yeah, and half the time they're that's like I said, who knows? Who knows how much they are aware?
Yeah, and even if they are aware, sometimes the people who make mystical art like this more or less have to lie to you about, the source of their inspiration and what's causing them to make that art. So to give another example of someone lying to us about something that's obviously a mystical work of art, you look at like the Matrix movies and how there's tons of religious symbolism in there. They escape from the Matrix and go to Zion. Obviously, that's a reference to Zionism and Zion in Israel. When Neo dies at the end, there's like the cross-shaped burst of energy that comes out of him. There's references to like Nebuchadnezzar and the Merovingian, who were, Merovingians were like historical kings. Nebuchadnezzar was a historical king. So both of them have plenty of occult theories about, them not just being normal humans. So there's references to spirituality, history, the occult, all sorts of things in the Matrix movies. And then you ask the Wachowskis who made it, and they say, oh, it's about becoming transgender. It's about popping hormone pills. It's about turning your genitals inside out. And it's like, obviously, that is not what the movies are about. Obviously, there's tons of symbolism that are not about that. But they're not allowed to tell you that.
Well, so is the red pill the trans pill? Is that what they said? Or the...
Yeah, they literally said the red pill represents like trans hormone pills, and that like Zion is because like the company that makes the trans hormones is in Israel.
I would be interested to dive deeper on that, because obviously like that is the red pill movie. I mean, there's so much good stuff in that, but like, what was their role in that, and like why did they do the transgender thing? Like, it's like I want to know, but I also kind of don't. But it's just fucking wild.
Yeah, but that's something that really. Seeing that made me realize that, if you're putting those kinds of messages in and more than you're allowed to tell people, you literally have to lie to the general public. Like, you're not allowed to just come out and say what it is your stuff is actually about and what it's actually based on.
Yeah.
As far as how that relates to Tolkien, so, I mentioned him being Catholic, and he said that Lord of the Rings was a Catholic work. I've got a buddy named Jonathan, who kind of helped red pill me on what its work is actually about. Because if you look through it, there's no references to Bible characters. There's no references to saints. There's no references to anything that's directly Catholic. There's no Hebrew or Latin or anything like that in it. But they do use the Nordic runes to make the Dwarven script. They do take a bunch of names from like the Nordic, mythology and legends and sagas. Like the dwarves are basically all taken from characters from Nordic spirituality. Gandalf's name, I believe, also comes from there. They directly quote the Havamal, which is one of the ancient Nordic religious texts. So they take a whole lot of spirituality from Nordic and Germanic, ancient Nordic and Germanic paganism, basically, and basically nothing from the Bible, basically nothing from Catholic saints. And Tolkien says this is a Catholic work when it's pretty obvious that the only way in which it's Catholic is that it took a bunch of stuff from paganism.
Yeah, for real. I'm trying to think because I know a guy who is Christian. He's like, it's just some weird. He's like he kind of converted later on, and he kind of references Tolkien a lot. Like he kind of like frames his like Christian view as like this kind of stepping into like a fictional frame, and uses Lord of the Rings a lot. And I didn't even think about that. Like, oh wait, maybe he uses. No, I think he does use Lord of the Rings. And obviously, the line "The Witch of Wardrobe" too is a little bit more in that direction. But yeah, Lord of the Rings. That's a good point. Like it really is super.
Yeah, because Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were friends, and I got to do a deep dive on C.S. Lewis at some point and see what's hidden in his work, because I'm sure there's a ton of stuff in there too.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the only other thing I've got on Lord of the Rings is you notice the King of Rohan, the Crown of Rohan, basically gets poisoned with a fake disease by a guy named Grima Wormtongue. And again, Grima, it's a name that's a little bit similar to Golem, and here he is like controlling the leader of a nation, through sorcery and basically turning him into a puppet or a golem. But also the fact that it's a crown, a king that is poisoned with a fake disease. So Corona means crown, and we had the coronavirus, which was a more or less a fake disease pandemic. I mean, there may have been a real disease, but most of what we were told about the pandemic was fake, and was basically used to control the public. So I found that to be an interesting synchronicity, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later when we get into DBZ, because they use a lot of that same symbolism and do a little bit more justice to the Corona prediction. But Tolkien was writing, 50 to 70 years before these events happened, so I think the fact that there's that kind of symbolism in it at all is a little bit impressive.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking too, like Dragon Ball is an Eastern kind of thing too. Everything else has been Western so far, so this is a whole different side of the globe that's tapping into this kind of stuff, either consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, but actually, before we get to DBZ, let's go ahead and get the Terminator stuff out of the way first. So unless you've got anything else that you wanted to add about Lord of the Rings before we go on to that one.
Nope. Let's go ahead and do it here. So Terminator over here, and oh good, I already have it pulled. This one already pulled up. Just gonna make it a little smaller. All right, looks good. 3, 2, 1, go.
Not a man. Machine. Terminator. Cyberdyne Systems Model 101.
A machine? Like a robot?
Not a robot. Cyborg. Cybernetic organism.
No, he was bleeding.
The Terminator's an infiltration unit. Part man, part machine. Underneath, it's a hyperalloy combat chassis. Microprocessor controlled. Fully armored. Very tough. But outside, it's living human tissue. Flesh, skin, hair, blood, grown for the cyborgs. That Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity, or remorse, or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
Defense network computers. New
powerful, hooked into everything, trusted to run it all. They say it got smart. A new order of intelligence. Then it saw all people as a threat, not just the ones on the other side. Decided our fate in a microsecond. Extermination.
You're a terminated fucker.
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming in.
I know.
Oh, the video's chopping up for me a little bit. Okay, there we go.
Get down.
So this other guy, he's just like you, right?
Not like me. A T-1000. Advanced prototype.
You mean more advanced than you are?
Yes. And mimetic polyalloy.
What the hell does that mean?
Liquid metal.
Where are we going?
We have to get out of the city immediately and avoid the authorities.
Listen, I gotta stop by my house. I want to pick up some stuff.
Negative. The T-1000 would definitely try to reacquire you there.
Sure?
I would.
Hey Gwen, you want some coffee?
No thanks. How about a beer?
Yeah, right. Hey, I got a full house.
That's good, Lewis.
Must be my lucky day.
Watching John with the machine, it was suddenly so clear. The Terminator would never stop. It would never leave him. And it would never hurt him, never shout at him or get drunk and hit him or say it was too busy to spend time with him. It would always be there, and it would die to protect him. of all the would-be fathers who came and went over the years, this thing, this machine, was the only one who measured up. In an insane world, it was the sanest choice.
Keeps freezing up for me. I don't know if it's my computer or the video.
And it must be
I think it's the
destroyed
video.
also.
Unfortunately, my software is kind of not the best. I should have double checked that the video came out okay.
Oh, it's all good.
Here.
It's just a couple. I can
cannot
skip ahead a little bit.
self-terminate. You must lower me into the steel.
Very nice. I haven't watched those movies in so long. I honestly forgot them.
Yeah, they're good films.
Hell yeah. Golems.
Yep, so this one, again, you kind of have some Saturn symbolism. I don't know if they mentioned the name Skynet in the clips that I grabbed, but they mentioned Cyberdyne Systems, but basically they create Skynet, this network of Defense Department computers that dude was talking about from the first movie, which, basically take over every aspect of our lives. And, we're kind of seeing that today with AI and with, smart homes, smartphones, everything is kind of becoming more and more digitized and more subject to possibility of control by AI or by, centralized computers. More and more of that's happening. So that's definitely a little bit more correct prediction than, just the symbolic predictions of things like 9/11 and COVID. But yeah, there's definitely that sort of prediction of how technology is going to take over every aspect of our lives and how it can potentially be turned against us. But as far as Skynet being, the name for this network of computers, of course, Saturn is a sky god. He's got a 6-letter name that starts with the letter S, as Skynet. It's not quite as close a name as Sauron, but it's close enough. And of course, they use time travel in order to fight their battles. Saturn being a god of time. So there's that kind of, it doesn't beat you over the head with its references in the way that things like, Back to the Future and to some extent Lord of the Rings do, but it definitely has that little element of it in there. And of course, you've got the focus on the Terminator's eyes, where he loses the eye in the first one and you see the little metallic red eye in there. The eye goes out when the first Terminator gets crushed. Even in the second movie, his face gets damaged, so you see the eye again. So that's sort of focus on the eye. Not only is that Saturn symbolism, but the eye is very important in all kinds of different spiritual and mystical traditions. Whether it's the third eye, whether it's the one-eyed god of wisdom, Odin. Whether there's the Egyptians had that eye symbol that they used, that their mystics used a lot. So. The eye is always a very mystical symbol and kind of represents your mental eye as much as like a physical eye in terms of opening your mental eye and being able to see the universe the way that it really is.
Yep.
So they've got that sort of symbolism in there. The focus on the Terminator's eye was kind of a big part of the media campaign in terms of like advertising the movie and how weird this mostly human but machine underneath creature is.
Reminds me of Hal from what was it? No,
oh yeah,
Space Odyssey.
2001. Yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and how it's basically just a big mechanical eye. Yeah, there's tons of symbolism in that movie and in the books it's based on as well. I haven't done the deep dive on that, but Stanley Kubrick did a lot of movies like that.
Oh God, yes. Man, I think of Eyes Wide Shut was a huge one, right?
Ooh, yeah.
That was
Eyes Wide Shut pretty much just like came out and told you while pretending that it's not telling you.
Yeah, it was like straight up. Here's what's happening, and now like you see the Epstein and some of that stuff even the Bohemian Grove and stuff like that was also confirmation. So,
yeah,
man, wild.
Yeah, and then in terms of like Masonic symbolism, you had when the T-1000 comes up out of the floor, it's coming up out of a black and white checkerboard floor. The sort of black and white checkerboard, that's a big piece of Masonic symbolism, that they reference constantly. You also have the golem like shape shifting to take on the form of others, and even in the first movie, the Terminator will like mimic the voices of others, and then in the second movie, you have the Terminator that can mimic the appearance of others as well.
Wow.
So I mean, you think about like how all the theories about Joe Biden actually being an actor, and how in so many shots it looks like he's wearing a mask and his face looks so different now than it did 10 years ago, and it's like, is that plastic surgery or is that actually a different person wearing a mask?
Yeah, or just a golem, just like a fucking robot altogether.
Yeah. I mean, world politics has been a stage for a very long time, since long before we had TV and Hollywood special effects and things like that. And who knows how many people throughout history have been a made-up persona that somebody was projecting onto the public rather than an actual person, rising there legitimately. So, it is a good thing to know that this is how world events can be controlled. And, if you think about that in real life, you never met Joe Biden. You have no idea whether or not the guy playing the president on TV is the actual person.
And even if it is, obviously, even if it is like a legit person, that whatever that thing is, like that person's doesn't have his shit together anyway, so it's just like a lose-lose.
Yeah. And then, as far as predictive stuff in that, it's definitely not the strongest prediction that we've seen so far, but you had the clearance 911, and then the truck flips up and slams into that and explodes. So, of course, they just happened to have 9'11" be the clearance limit on the overpass where the explosion happened. Again, nowhere near the best or clearest prediction, but when you've got a movie that is clearly referencing quite a bit of mystical symbolism, and then they throw in little references like that, it's kind of like the Simpsons 9/11 reference, where it's definitely not hammering home the 9/11 symbolism the way that Back to the Future did, but it's there. And if once you've noticed the pattern that tons of different people have done this, you're like, okay, yeah, it's not as strong, like that on its own you might not believe it, but when you've seen half a dozen other examples of it, you're like, okay, yeah, that's probably what.
Wild. Damn.
Alright, well, do you have any other thoughts on the other thing, I guess the ending, forgot to mention that. So again, you have T-1000 being knocked into the pit, into the molten metal. Yeah, and then, of course, the Golem has to descend in and die with him, the same way Darth Vader died with Palpatine, and the same way that Golem died with the Ring, and with Sauron's hope for conquering Middle-earth.
It's awesome.
It's all that's 3 Golem narratives in a row that have all had the exact same ending.
And these are like super central, like pop culture. Like these are huge. These are like some of the biggest ones, basically.
Oh yeah, because I mean, Star Wars, one of the most successful film franchises of all time. Lord of the Rings, one of the most popular and enduring books of the last century. Terminator, maybe not quite as big, but it's still, pretty well known.
Especially when you talk about anything futuristic and stuff. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well,
Dragon
I guess let's move on to Dragon Ball then.
This is one I'm sad I haven't watched Dragon Ball all the way through. I need to at least do like a summary of it. All right, let's see here.
Yeah, if you're gonna rewatch it, then I would say rewatch Kai instead of rewatching the original DBZ, because they cut out like most of the filler in Kai.
Okay, yeah, there's one that we have access to through the subscriptions we have now. So and I watched a little bit of it, but I may get back on it. But cool. I think I got it here. I'll go ahead and 3, 2, 1, go.
It was a nice warm-up before the real Super Saiyan arrives.
Hey, Frieza!
Oh. Fool, you missed by a mile.
Say, that logo on your sleeve, that's Capsule Corporation, isn't it? Well, then what's your name? Or is that a big secret, too?
Actually, it is. Wait, are you serious? You traveled back from the future? That's right, and my name's Trunks. Some kind of hybrid combination of man and machine. Androids born right here on Earth. And the man who created them was none other than the Red Ribbon Army's resident lunatic, Dr. Gero. Not long after the present, Goku, you're going to come down with an illness. It's going to be the death of you. It's a virus that attacks your heart. What the hell? Where are they? Yes. Wait. Red Ribbon?
You found them.
Guys, they're here!
Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, babe. I'm still on the call for a little bit. About 15 minutes, probably.
It was my understanding you wanted the streets free of onlookers. Evidently, our solution does not please you. You see, using a fleet of miniature surveillance drones, we have kept a close watch on your exploits for some time.
His heart can't shake the infection!
That doesn't make sense! How can his heart still be an issue when he took the cure?
Well, he never got sick, so he didn't take it!
We've got a future to change.
And there's no reason to assume that the future's decided to the last detail. The kid was off about Goku by a decent margin. Trunks going back in time in the first place was likely to cause at least some repercussions.
I have you now, and I won't let you go until your energy is completely drained!
Oh, there you are. Ah, be it ever so humble.
You're never putting us to sleep again, you stupid old bastard.
As your creator, I am ordering you, 17!
Just because they look harmless doesn't mean you can let your guard down. Those are the worst villains the Earth will ever know.
Number 16, huh? It's another perpetual energy model, right? But it's different from 17 and me somehow. It's much bigger than the two of us. I wonder what else is...
You little brat! How dare you! You are mine! You're my creation! Obey me!
What kind of monster does that to his maker anyway?
Truth be known, Dr. Gero ordered us to leave you inside of there. He kept yelling about how we were all doomed if you woke up again.
So, would you care to fill us in on what the old man was so upset about?
True, but why would they kill Gero 1 minute, then turn around and carry out his orders the next?
Uh-oh! I need help here! The perp is resisting!
That's resisting? Huh, imagine that. See, I always thought resisting...
Whoa! A few feet back there, honey. Don't make me...
would be something more like this.
What are you...
Bye.
This is the ship you built. I've had it with me in capsule form since I landed.
That settles it, then. This broken down old thing can't be yours.
No, Mom. There's only ever been one of these. Weird as it is, there's just no other way. This is the same one I came here in. I don't know how. It's gotta be.
Are you sure?
Positive.
What's that say? Hope.
Right. You painted it on there yourself just before I left. And it's on both machines.
What if I told you there's a room up at Kami's Lookout that'll let you do a year's worth of training in a day?
You're serious?
Yeah, it's real. You should come try it. And hey, don't worry, it's not like you'd be stuck in there with me. Only 2 people are allowed in at once. To save time, I figure I'll take Gohan and you can take Trunks.
Fine. But I get to go first, agreed?
Agreed. Wow, this heat, it's suffocating. And the gravity's a lot stronger in here. What is this?
And if he started hunting 17 and 18, he could reach his perfect form at any time. If both you and 17 are absorbed, there will be no way to stop Cell from destroying this world. He will win.
17! Behind you! Watch out!
So sorry to keep you waiting.
Stop! Let me out of here, you freak!
Come, join with me, 18. Let us discover perfection together. Is that so? Who are you trying to fool? You're too soft-hearted to attack your own father. I call your bluff. Take your best shot.
Damn you, Cell!
Cell's dream of reaching his perfect form has finally come true.
Hell yeah. A lot of the same stuff.
All right.
Man, I know what to look for now. I see the time travel, killing their own master, the disease, so much.
Oh yeah, there's a lot there. So I guess we'll start with the beginning where, if you haven't seen the prior story arc of DBZ, basically that one was about a guy named Frieza who was this like galactic conqueror who wiped out the Saiyan race, which is what Goku and Trunks and Vegeta all belong to. They're an ancient race of noble warriors who, when they reach their legendary Super Saiyan form, their hair turns blonde, their eyes turn blue. So they're this ancient blonde-haired, blue-eyed legendary race that Frieza tries to exterminate from the galaxy, all but the last handful of them. Well, and interestingly enough, Frieza's name, of course, it's 6 letters long. It starts with the 6th letter of the alphabet, and it's, his whole family has names themed after ice. So, like, his brother's name is Cooler, his dad's name is King Cold, his name is Frieza. Ice makes hex crystals, so that's 3 6s all in relation to the name of the guy who's trying to exterminate the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he comes back in, halfway mechanical form, so halfway golemized at the start of this arc, and is killed by a guy named Trunks, whose name is 1 letter off from being an anagram for Saturn, just like Sauron was. On his jacket, you've got the Capsule Corp logo, the 2 C's, one inside the other with a circle around them, so you've got concentric rings, just like Saturn. And he's a time traveler.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about this CC, the company. I couldn't see it though, but yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so lots of Saturn references around him, and of course he's the first one to go into the hyperbolic time chamber and get to, warp time. He's also the one that time travels, so lots of time-themed symbolism surrounding him in this whole entire story arc. So he comes back in time to predict a virus that is going to lock Goku down by attacking his heart, and when the threat that he predicts arrives, the first android that they fight is called Number 19. And he is a Chinese clown with a golden crown with a spike coming up from his crown chakra. Clown and crown, of course, L and R are basically the same letter in Japanese. So you've got Chinese crown or Corona 19, who is the enemy that comes when Goku is locked down by his heart. And then you look at, when they attack the city, there's, bodies collapsed in the middle of the street, just like all those videos that we saw from China of, the virus is causing people to collapse in the streets. And then, when they catch Yamcha and Android 20 grabs him around the mouth, covers his mouth like that, like forcing somebody to wear a mask.
Right.
That's how they drain energy from people. And then, it's while Goku is fighting 19 that he actually finally succumbs to the heart virus. So there's all this, 19 and, Chinese crown symbolism around Goku being attacked by the heart virus. So all of that together, it seems like a much stronger COVID-19 prediction. In terms of, you've got the crown / corona, Chinese clown / crown / corona 19 is the one that attacks when Goku succumbs to the heart virus.
One thing I was thinking about was, just we talk about like a lot of the 9/11 symbolism and a lot of the COVID symbolism. And I'm like, why these two among all the other things that could happen? And when I think about it, those are like two of the biggest events within the last at least 20, 30 years that have shaped like Western civilization, especially America. Or really, obviously COVID was the worst. Well, I mean, really both of them had global implications.
Yeah, 9/11 probably shaped our foreign policy a whole lot more, but COVID actually impacted our lives in a much more direct way. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it makes sense. It makes sense. Those are the ones that make their way into the representation and the kind of the pre-programming, predictive.
And then of course the other android who's with 19 is 20. So we saw in Lord of the Rings the numbers 19 and 20. I mentioned them how there were 19 rings, and then the 20th one was the Master Ring.
Yeah.
And number 20, that's the Master Golem. That's Dr. Giro's Golem self, basically, where he turned had himself turned into an android. And when you look at 19 and 20, 19, as I mentioned, is wearing the little round golden crown, and then 20 is also wearing basically a round Russian hat. So both of them are wearing small round hats, which when you knock them off, they have that kind of yarmulke-shaped dome thing on their head. And 20 looks kind of like a Russian, 19 kind of looks Chinese. So you've got China and Russia, the two communist golems, basically showing up there as the Red Ribbon Army.
I heard that. Yeah, I did catch on. Yeah, it's like I need to start having like a little checklist as I'm watching anything now, where I'm like looking for like six. I'm looking for sixes and circles and Saturns and eyes and diseases, because it's Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make like Mystic Bingo and just have your little bingo card with all those squares on it.
Yes, yes, I like that. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I thought the kind of the yarmulke look and the brown hats on the heads of those two, along with the the red ribbon symbolism. Also the ribbon, it's a ribbon, but it also looks like an hourglass turned sideways, so that's kind of another Saturn reference.
Right.
But the hourglass symbolism does come up in other Mystic works, not really the ones that we've seen tonight other than this one, but it does definitely come up in some others that we'll probably look at another time. So yeah, you have all of that, and then of course when Dr. Giro returns to his underground lab that hidden away in the side of the mountain, it's in that sort of pit. It's not the same metaphor of being the golem throwing its master into the pit and then dying with him, but he is killed by his own creation, essentially, in the same way that the others are, and he is in an underground pit. So it's sort of similar enough that you can kind of see it as an allegory, even if it's not the exact same symbolism in the same way that you saw the overlap between the last three and the symbolism they used.
Yeah, I look at some of those like little clips or there. I'm thinking like, like what was that about? And that makes sense. I was definitely thinking, obviously, yeah, they're still in the mountain. There still is like a hole in the mountain, and they're inside of it, like, or underground. It's similar.
Yeah, and then I found it really funny, when the androids wake up and and everybody's like, "Oh, this is the greatest horror terror known to man," and it's just like a normal white man and woman.
That's funny too.
And then Yeah, and then when you see what they actually do, like, the android picks up the cop car and throws it, but she doesn't actually kill anybody. Like, neither of them actually kill anybody as they're, basically traveling through the world trying to find Goku because they're programmed to. they cause a little bit of mischief along the way. They steal a few things. They steal a van whose license plate is 6969, which I don't know if that's a perverted reference or if that's more of a yin yang reference since it's Eastern. It might just be that. But yeah, so this white man and woman that are supposedly the most horrible terror that's ever been known to man are nowhere near as awful as was predicted they would be. And, even when they end up fighting the good guys, they basically just beat them up enough that they give up on fighting them and then go back to their journey and don't even kill anybody.
It makes me think
And,
too,
like,
there's probably like a whole other lineage of Eastern kind of like symbolism and myths and narratives, like this, the journey to the East and some of these kind of things that would be, especially when you're looking at anime, there's just so much rich ancient culture there. I love it.
Yeah, and the guy who made this, when he was making the first series Dragon Ball about Goku's childhood, he drew a lot on those Eastern myths. But then in Dragon Ball Z, I guess he went a little bit more, Western and Abrahamic in terms of some of his symbolism. Maybe to appeal to a broader audience, or maybe just because he'd reached that point in his own mystical training. As this basically the whole thing is about this warrior kind of going through this mystical training in order to learn how to control his own life energy. Like that was a big part of the Dragon Ball story arc, was him learning to do that, and then Dragon Ball Z is about him kind of ascending to the next level of that. So,
yes,
yeah. But yeah, back to what I was saying about how funny it is that there's supposedly this terror, and of course, Dr. Gero says that 16 is the most dangerous of them all, and then he wakes up 16, and not only does he never attack anybody except Cell, which is another of Gero's creations, but there's plenty of scenes of like birds landing on him and squirrels crawling up him, and he's just like, "Oh, cool, nature friend."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like his entire reason for deciding to attack Cell, who ends up being the big bad of that story arc, is because he thinks that Cell is a threat to the world and is going to destroy all the wildlife that he's making friends with.
You're right, yeah, because they said something about like just. Well, no, that's why that was Lord of the Rings, where he was talking about deforestation.
Oh yeah, there's definitely that like industrialization allegory. Which another thing about Lord of the Rings I forgot to mention is Tolkien said on multiple occasions that he hated allegory. And yet you have the clear Saturn allegory, you have the clear Golem allegory, you have allegories about industrialization, you have allegories about war, and that's another reason why I say that Tolkien, especially, and many other mystic artists, I believe that they have to lie about what they're telling you in order to sort of keep it a mystery, because if they just come out and tell you, it takes away all the mystery from it.
Right. So, I think the goal a lot of times is to try to just like work with certain patterns and archetypes and stuff that can obviously apply to like kind of different different settings, like, and it's generic enough that it can do that, and it's kind of timeless. And that kind of goes, that's like a full circle about a lot of these like central themes, and especially the myth of Prague, and how enduring that general idea is about like you're creating something, you're kind of like creating life. It's coming back to kind of like it gets out of control. You've got to fix it. That whole kind of thing. Oh yeah.
Yep. But then at the end, Cell, Dr. Gero's last creation, comes along, and he is in many ways a representation of the hell that our society is being pushed towards. He is a blend of multiple races. He's part human, part Saiyan, part Namekian, part whatever Frieza and his dad were. So he's a mix of many different races, and in order to achieve his perfect form, he has to absorb both the male 17 and the female 18.
Oh, so wow, he's got it all. He's got all the races, and he's trans. Wow, he is. Yeah. It really is the peak.
Omnigender, because he's absorbing both genders into himself.
That's the future that liberals and Jews want, right there. The ultimate ascendancy. Yeah. And merge with the machine while you're at it too.
Yeah, because he's biomechanical, so he's both biological and mechanical. Wow. So yeah, human and machine, and multiple races and both sexes, and
that's probably where we're headed.
Yep.
Either that, or or the Aryan super Saiyan outcome.
Yep. So we can either get in touch with that ancient ancestry and the spiritual power that's within us in order to defeat this horrible nightmare that's being thrust upon us, or we can get absorbed by Cell and end up becoming part of this multiracial, omnisexual golem thing.
Omnisexual. We're saying this like this is the first time I've heard this word, but like I swear within the next couple of years, I'm sure it'll be like a new thing. It'll be like the new fucking.
Oh yeah, I'm sure somebody out there has already used it. It's
like pansexual, pretty much, or whatever.
Yeah, you just hope that it never actually catches on, but you know that at some point some horrible person will cause it to catch on.
Yeah.
And there's more in terms of like Masonic and Jewish symbolism later on in the Cell saga. I just didn't want to make the video like 15 minutes or anything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I can tell you put a lot of work into it. I can tell like it took some time to put it together because there's a lot of clips edited together. Like and of course like what all of these like Lord of the Rings series is like 9 hours. The Star Wars movies is 6. Like you did Clone Wars, and then like Dragon Ball Z has hundreds of episodes. So trying to go through the episodes, find the clip, cut the clip, put it together. So I appreciate a lot of the work you put in, and it's done. It all comes together to craft this like overarching like narrative, which is very powerful.
Yeah, and you can see the different parallels between the movies. Like even in that scene in Terminator where his arm is opened up and you're seeing the pistons inside, and you see the exact same imagery in Star Wars, and
man, I love it. It all ties together. And it really that's one of the big I wrote down. That's one of the big takeaways through it all too. Is just like paying attention to some of what's underneath and how it's paralleling to other references and historical references and potentially future references, and just the power of storytelling and cinema. And myth in general. I remember watching Star Wars, or obviously I watched Star Wars growing up, but I remember when I first started to kind of begin my journey and kind of reading about like Joseph Campbell and the hero's myth and archetypes and Jung and stuff, and I remember like having like a really breakthrough. One of my like really big breakthrough moments was like thinking about Star Wars and being like, oh, okay, it really coming to terms with like the hero's myth, which is like one of those also like almost. I guess I would say hero's myth is one of the few that might be more powerful and more enduring than something like Golem of Prague, because it's just like such a generic archetype. That I would say we could do a video on that one, but that would end up being multi-days
we would
long.
Have so many, we would have so many things that we could touch on. Star Wars goes through that, and Lord of the Rings goes through that. Even Dragon Ball Z goes through that. Not so much Terminator, but yeah.
I'll say briefly. Just I saw a really cool like graphic. It was like a circle, and it was like the stages of the hero's journey according to like the pills. There was like I guess you like start off blue pilled, I believe, and then it's like you get red pilled, and then you get black pilled, and then you get white pilled or whatever. And it was like showing kind of the different state. I was like, oh man, I love that. That's super relatable. And then you get trans pilled. Then you get omnisex pilled at the end of the day.
Oh god,
the final pill.
Hopefully you don't get omnisex pilled, but yeah, I definitely feel like I've went through my red pill stage. I've gone through my black pill stage, and I'm entering my white pill stage. And even though things are terrible, and even though the forces of evil are all arrayed against us, there is still hope. And the more spiritual you become, the more you're going to find that hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I love it. I've had people. I remember one guy, like he was like we had met, but in the past, and just had some conversations and stuff. And then we met again, and he was like, "Oh, you're the optimist," and like this is how he knew. I was like, "Well, I like that." And I took some kind of quiz or something recently, and it kind of came up too. It was like a bunch of things. It was like, what trait do you like value the most in yourself? And there were 3 that were like really high, but I was just like, I think the optimism is so key, like that white pill, because again, like especially among these crowds of people who are red pilled, you definitely see a lot of people in that black pill stage, and it's so hard to like really like push through that and have hope and work for good and like find good in the small things and be able to like not get sucked into all the crazy stuff that's happening on bigger scales, and just like celebrate the small wins and do focus on what's within your control, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and one of the reasons I saved Dragon Ball Z for last is it does kind of have that message of hope, not just the one written on the time machine, but also them saying, well, the future's not actually written yet, and they wouldn't have to do all the crap that they're doing if it was.
Yeah.
And so even if we are, as Terminator says, fighting the war for the future today, because that Whether the time symbolism is because we're actually in a time war, or whether there's otherworldly entities that are controlling our timeline or whatever, one way or another, there is a conflict there, and there are multiple sides to that conflict, and we may be kind of drowning in the Jewish side of that conflict right now, but that doesn't mean that that's the only way that things can go. That doesn't mean that there's no hope for the future. That doesn't mean that they've already won. They wouldn't have to do the things that they're doing if they'd already won.
Yeah,
So
I've definitely seen some
it
memes
is up
like
to
that.
us to find the way to change that.
I love that. It's like, yeah, they wouldn't have to try so hard if it was doomed. Also, this is a little bit of a this is a random quick aside, but I just thought of a post. It may have been like a 4chan story where someone talked about like a dream they had, and it was about time travel, and it was like they went to like a certain point of the future, and they got like trapped. There was like some kind of like trap for people traveling past a certain point of time in the future, and it was just getting like populated. It apparently had something to do with like America. Oh man, I wish I could find it. I'm gonna look this up for next time, or I'll just send it to you after this. But it just kind of reminded me because we've done a lot of time travel type stuff today. But yeah, the message of hope. That's definitely a good one to kind of latch onto amidst all the other chaos.
Yep. Yeah, not to downplay the forces that are arrayed against us or their strength, because we've definitely got some obstacles to overcome, but don't let that get you down for too long. Use the black pill as motivation to improve yourself so that you can find the white pill.
Yeah, and typically a lot of times I think about it just in terms of the red. I think about it just like red pill, blue pill as like a balance between the two. I'll spend time where I'm like really red pilled and like really invested in like trying to raise awareness and fight the powers and that kind of thing. And then a lot of times I'll just kind of like I realize I'm getting out of balance. I need to kind of focus on the blue pill a little bit, just kind of like step out of it, just kind of relax, enjoy life. And that's kind of like the little bit of the cycle that I'm going through right now. But yeah, it's just always a balance. That's always a key one too.
Yep.
So, hell yeah. Very good. Very good.
Right, well, that was quite a bit of content we went through. I know we're definitely over the hour mark at this point.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah. The hour's just like a general, just like a rough kind of thing we've shot for in the past. But this one definitely warranted, because this is going forward because there's a lot of good content here. So. Yeah, I like this. I'm looking forward to doing more. So cool. Yeah, yep. We'll go ahead and we can probably go ahead and wrap it up there. Yeah. You have anything else?
One last thing, I gotta give a shout out to my artist friend who I had make a t-shirt just for this video. It's got Darth Vader, Golem, the androids, and Terminator all throwing Jews down the well.
Oh my god. I saw the Darth Vader on the right, and so I assumed it was a Star Wars shirt, but I couldn't see. That's fucking awesome. That is... Okay, I should have gotten, like, if you have, like, a clip of that art for it, I should have made that the background. Maybe I'll make it the, like, title for the video when I upload it, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll have to send you the pic, but yeah, I wanted to say thank you to my artist, Flown, for making that for me.
That's awesome. It's like peak. Every time you've had, like, a relevant or just, like, cool shirt, this is, like, the crown achievement of that. The circular hat of that. Cool, man. Alrighty, yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Thanks for putting it together. Thanks, everybody who ends up watching this. I enjoyed it. We enjoyed having y'all, and we'll try to keep making content. See y'all soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler, and thanks everybody out there.
Alrighty, clipping it there.